breaking news stories to bring you tonight. First, there is a showdown brewing at this hour in the sanctuary state of California, with some now revolting against that state's insane policies that literally shield criminal illegal immigrants. Now, one California county has a new plan to buck the Golden State's policies and actually help ICE enforce America's immigration laws. The undersheriff from Orange County, who is fighting back, he will join us exclusively tonight. Plus, we will show you the all-out hysteria coming from the left after the Commerce Department announced that the 2020 census will actually ask respondents if they're citizens. A citizen question on the census. The horror. The American left is in a complete meltdown tonight. And after all but guaranteeing a wall on the southern border, the president is now closer tonight than you think to fulfilling that important campaign promise. We have those details. And also, President Trump is now getting tough on Russia. The mainstream media is spinning in circles. Didn't they claim he'd never get tough on Russia? Plus, we have brand new discoveries tonight to bring you that could reveal even more bias and corruptions, believe it or not, at the highest levels of the FBI. Sit tight. We had a lot of information that we're going to get in tonight. Jeff Zucker, I hope you're watching tonight's breaking news opening monologue. All right, this January, radical left-wing California Governor Jerry Moonbeam Brown, he signed a bill into law making California a sanctuary state. In other words, California's lawless lawmakers are now literally barring police from determining the citizenship status of anyone charged with a crime, thereby preventing the federal government from effectively deporting criminal illegal immigrants and enforcing federal law. But now some localities, they are starting to fight back. Now, the city of Los Alamitos, that's in Orange County, California, they voted earlier this month to actively defy the state's sanctuary status. And earlier today, Orange County supervisors, they followed suit, and they have voted to join President Trump's lawsuit against California. And in the meantime, while the county sheriff's office has now implemented a new plan to skirt California's insane sanctuary laws, they are going to actually assist the federal government in deporting illegal immigrants convicted of serious crimes and, of course, those standing in the way of the rule of law. Now, the plan is really simple. The Orange County Sheriff's Office will now make the names and release dates for every prisoner publicly available in an online database called Who's in Jail. Now, this will allow ICE to cross-reference identities and deport those illegal immigrants that are convicted of crimes and, of course, a threat to society. And in response, the Attorney General of California, well, he's now issuing a veiled threat to those that challenge California's sanctuary status, which, of course, defies federal law. Watch this.
I'll have to take a closer look at what Orange County is saying and possibly doing. The state law is state law, and it's my job to enforce state law. I will do so, and we want to make sure that every jurisdiction, including Orange County, understand what state law requires of the people and the subdivisions of the state of California.
I actually dare the Attorney General of California to do this. Now, if he does, that means the Oakland mayor can be arrested by the federal government for aiding and abetting criminal illegal aliens by tipping them off that they're going to enforce the law. Now, we'll have a lot more on this later in the show when the Orange County undersheriff will join us. Also tonight, the California lunacy continues. That state is now set to sue the Trump administration yet again, this time over a question on the upcoming 2020 U.S. Census. Now, the census will ask non-respondents or those that want to respond, are you a U.S. citizen? That's it. Now, the California Attorney General tweeted that the question is, quote, not just a bad idea, but also illegal. Mr. Attorney General, I beg to differ. Now, there was even more hysteria, of course, in the left-wing, abusively biased, so-called mainstream media. Watch this.
What do we want from the census? We want an accurate count. Let's defer to the experts. Will this help with accuracy? It will not, because people will not answer the question.
Let's be realistic about this. Do we think this is about getting an accurate view of the census and protecting voting rights, or is it to, in fact, suppress minority voting?
So the Justice Department's motivation here seems to be quite so a ruse for adding a question that could very seriously depress participation and result in a failed census altogether.
What do you say to critics who argue that ultimately this is a way to target immigrants, that it's going to be fewer resources for immigrant communities?
Now, the main goal of the census has always been to determine demographic information about the population that lives inside the United States. But the left, members of the biased press, they want you to believe that we aren't allowed to determine how many citizens versus non-citizens are actually living here. That makes no sense, considering congressional districts are literally made up of what the population is. Nothing says that responsible immigration policy, like, well, who's living in your country? Really hard question. We'll have more on that in a second. Now, when it does come to the wall on the southern border, there is some big news out of Washington. According to reports, the president will use military and national defense funding to cover initial construction costs of the wall, citing what is a clear national security risk presented by unprotected borders. This is a huge step forward for the administration, and it would be a political victory and serious progress, of course, to battle and secure our borders. Now, here's what the deputy White House press secretary, Hogan Gidley, had to say about this on Fox and Friends earlier today.
The president is now saying, or he kind of hinted around at least on Twitter over the weekend, that he could use all of that military funding. There was a lot of military funding going into the pocketbooks of those men and women that are fighting for our country. But there's a lot of extra money to be used, more than what they asked for, more than what the White House asked for. So there's talk that he might use that extra money to build the wall. Since he didn't get the funding, he only got 1.6.
That was his Twitter.
You're right. His Twitter was saying we might use the military money to fund the wall. Is that going to happen?
Well, I don't want to get ahead of his announcement, but I can say this is one reason that the
Wait, what announcement?
Well, if he's going to make an announcement how he spends that money to build the wall. But I can say that's one of the major victories for the American people in this piece of legislation that the president pushed, which was actually building a wall.
So when the funding becomes reality, President Trump will be fulfilling a major campaign promise. And don't forget, the president has already started to look for prototypes for this wall. All right, another top story tonight. The Destroy Trump press, they are spinning in circles after more than a year obsessing over Russia collusion. Well, the media's fragile narrative, of course, is crumbling right before their eyes. Now, the left said that President Trump would never, ever be tough on Russia. You might remember this daily hysteria. Take a look.
I think he's afraid of the president of Russia.
Why?
Well, I think one can speculate as to why. That the Russians may have something on him personally that they could always roll out and make his life more difficult.
It's so clear at this point that Vladimir Putin and his associates, somebody has something on Donald Trump.
That may be something that turns the key in the Russia probe, is figuring out why this president is so deferential to Putin and to Russia, and if there is some sort of compromise that they have on him.
Donald Trump is afraid. A political hurricane is out there at sea for him. We'll call it Hurricane Vladimir, if you will, the whole Russian thing.
They make these decisions time and time again in a way that makes it appear that they're hostages, that he's Vladimir Putin's hostage.
That was just last week. Oh, they have something on Trump. He can't act against Putin. Well, yesterday, the Trump administration, they announced tough new actions against Vladimir Putin and his regime in response to the poisoning of a former spy and his daughter in Great Britain. Oh, the Trump policy includes the expulsion of 60 Russian diplomats, the closure of Russia's consulate in Seattle. Pretty tough, make no mistake. This is a very aggressive move against Putin's regime. It sends a powerful message that the United States and our allies are not going to bow down to Moscow. And I guess they don't have anything on Trump. Even former CIA director turned CNN shill Michael Hayden, he's praising President Trump. Wow, hell is frozen over. Let's look.
So, felt familiar, felt a bit like old times. Now look at what just happened. We are tough on Russia. We acted in concert with our allies globally. The United States took a leadership role, very un-Trumpian. And so I'm very happy to see it.
Glad we can make you happy. General Hayden is right, but some in the media, they're still doing whatever they can to discredit President Trump's latest move. By the way, Obama never did anything this tough. He was telling Dmitry Medvedev, tell Vladimir I'll have more flexibility after the election. Watch this.
It was almost like the old days, where the United States and its allies forged something of a common position. The not-so-good part of this, Joe, this is foreign policy on autopilot.
We still could have done a lot more. If we really want to hurt the Russians, and Putin specifically, you go after the banks here, where there's still a lot of Russian money being housed.
I think what's happened is the allies have kind of shamed the president into this action today. We would be standing alone, very obviously, if we didn't do something. It allows the president cover. He can say, look, I'm tough on Russia, but Putin is laughing at Trump tonight because he knows he has license to do whatever he wants.
Did the administration send a strong enough signal?
Not yet. If you want to send a strong signal, I think at some point you got to look at some money sanctions. You got to get at Putin and the individuals around him.
You mean like President Trump pursuing energy independence? That is the heart of the Russian economy. And guess what? That'll hurt Vladimir Putin and any economic chances of growth that he has. I've told you journalism is dead and buried in this country, so it's not surprising to hear the media bending over backwards to bash President Trump, even when he does something really tough and strong and good. Now, you're not going to hear this from the so-called journalists over at these other networks, but it is important to remember this is just the latest tough action from the Trump administration, because they won't tell you, but earlier in March, the president announced critical new economic sanctions against Russia in response to election meddling. In February, around 300 Kremlin-linked Russian mercenaries were killed or wounded by the U.S. military, that following Russia's aggressive actions near a base in Syria where Americans were stationed. And, of course, this all comes after President Obama essentially did nothing but appease and ignore and suck up to Vladimir Putin year after year. Now, tonight, Russia is vowing to retaliate against the Trump administration's tough actions. Oh, maybe they'll release the information they have on Trump. But unlike the Obama administration, President Trump, well, he's not going to take hostile actions by Russia very lightly. And meanwhile, now that the media's Russia, Russia, Russia narrative has fallen apart, it's stormy, 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 and more stormy taking center stage. And desperate to find some kind of division between President Trump and his supporters, well, fake news, CNN, they actually amazingly held a focus group. They did it with Christian female Trump supporters. They wanted to get their reaction to Anderson Cooper's really, really bizarre and creepy interview with Stormy Daniels and, of course, Karen McDougal. Unfortunately for fake news, CNN, well, the group session didn't exactly go as they hoped it would, and you could actually see the reaction in their so-called journalists. Take a look.
What was your first impression of Stormy Daniels?
I feel sorry for her. My heart hurts for her.
This is a porn star. Why are we giving it any credibility?
Exactly. Why would she come out and give this interview if she wasn't telling the truth?
Money and more money.
Do any, based on this interview, do any of you believe that Stormy Daniels did have sex with Donald Trump?
I don't believe it because I haven't seen any hard proof.
I know that when I voted for him, I wasn't voting for a choir boy.
He had to change as a person in order to become a president. Stormy Daniels, if you, the lifestyle that she's leading right now, I mean, I wish she would turn her life over the way that Trump has.
Yikes, that didn't work out the way they planned. Now, meanwhile, over at CNN, the king of porn, soon to be really scandal-plagued, Jeff Zucker, just saying, by the way, Jeff, we know, and best friend of Matt Lauer, by the way, it's an open secret, and the chief of fake news and his #1 news anchor, Anderson Cooper, they're now desperately trying to rehabilitate their reputations tonight after Jerry Springer Jr., Anderson Creepy Cooper, had his interviews with Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels. Let's take a look.
Would he call you?
He would call me, I would call him, vice versa.
So you had his phone number. When he called, did his number show up on the phone? Were you attracted to him? So the sex was consensual. Did he actually try to hand you money? Did he bring up his wife? Would he talk about his child, his son? Were you in love with him?
I was, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And do you think he was in love with you? Did Donald Trump ever say to you that he loved you? Did he have any nicknames for you? What did you think of the apartment? And he showed around the apartment. How did you feel being in his apartment? Did he ever compare you to any of his kids? Did he ever use protection? You told Donald Trump to turn around and take off his pants.
Yes.
And did he?
Yes. So he turned around and pulled his pants down a little. You know, he had underwear on and stuff, and I just gave him a couple swats.
This was done in a joking manner?
Yes.
Did you two go out for dinner that night?
No.
You had dinner in the room?
Yes.
What happened next? And you had sex with him?
Yes.
You were 27, he was 60. Were you physically attracted to him?
No.
Not at all?
No.
Did you want to have sex with him?
No. But I didn't say no. I'm not a victim. I'm not.
It was entirely consensual?
Oh, yes.
In an industry where condom use is an issue, did he use a condom?
No.
Did you ask him to?
No.
After you had sex, what happened? He definitely wanted to continue to see you.
Oh, for sure.
It wasn't, at that point, a business meeting. It was just watching Shark Week.
Yeah.
Jerry Springer has a lot of new competition. The reviews, by the way, have not been pretty for the fake news network. Unfortunately, we hear there's a lot more bad news coming. Now, in just a few minutes, the great one, Mark Levin, is going to weigh in on all things fake news CNN and, of course, their new low. But first, also tonight, Congressman Mark Meadows and his congressional investigators, they are making very important discoveries on a real news story with damning potential implications for James Comey and bias at some of the highest levels at the FBI. Over the weekend, Congressman Meadows tweeted out a shocking text between the disgraced anti-Trump FBI lovebirds Lisa Page, Peter Strzok. In the exchange, Page sends a link to an article, writes, "Ha, first line made me smile." Now, the first line of that article from July of 2016 reads, quote, "Potentially unpleasant news for Jim Comey. We need you to intervene in the 2016 election again." Now, as Meadows points out, now it's pretty important to note this text came just days after the FBI began their Russia investigation and right after they exonerated Hillary Clinton. Now, this is an eerie and potentially damning new discovery. And by the way, it's just the latest reason why a second special counsel needs to be appointed to investigate the investigators. They cannot investigate themselves. Now, remember, this is what Attorney General Jeff Sessions said during his interview with our own Shannon Bream earlier this month. This is important. Pay close attention.
I have appointed a person outside of Washington, many years in the Department of Justice, to look at all the allegations that the House Judiciary Committee members sent to us, and we're conducting that investigation.
Every day we have more and more information coming out about the deep state forces that are working against President Trump, of course, with their friends, the compliant news media. Now, also tonight, the House Judiciary Committee Chairman Bob Goodlatte, he is demanding answers, rightly so. Now, late last week, he issued a subpoena to the DOJ, citing the slow pace of cooperation from the FBI for information related to the Bureau's Clinton investigation and documents explaining why Andrew McCabe was fired. Earlier tonight, the FBI director, Wray, has now responded to this request, promising to speed up the production of documents by doubling the amount of staff working on the request. And he wrote, quote, "Up until today, we have dedicated 27 FBI staff to review the records that are potentially responsive to Chairman Goodlatte's request. The actual number of documents responsive to this request is likely in the thousands. Regardless, I agree that the current pace of production is too slow. Accordingly, I am now doubling the number of assigned FBI staff for a total of 54 to cover 2 shifts per day, 8 till midnight, to expedite completion of this project." There are 1.2 million pages involved. Now, in this program, we have promised to not stop our digging for truth and for answers, because you, the American people, deserve that. You deserve that and so much more. Which brings us to our next story tonight that is now breaking from Sarah Carter. According to her sources, the special counsel, Robert Mueller, has finally literally complied with the judge's order to hand over all of the evidence in Mueller's case that he has against General Michael Flynn to authorities and attorneys. Now, this comes as some are now speculated that Mueller intentionally withheld information that would be exculpatory to Flynn in order to garner a plea deal. We reached out to the special counsel's office for comment on Sarah's reporting. Of course, they denied comment. She joins us now. Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett and, of course, investigative reporter Sarah Carter. This is huge because the judge we're talking about is the judge that was involved in the Ted Stevens case. He is the one that found that exculpatory evidence was withheld in that case. We know that both Weissman and Robert Mueller have in their histories withholding exculpatory evidence. This judge sounded ticked off. He wants to make the decision. Does that now mean General Flynn might be withdrawing that plea and maybe even exonerated?
That's what we don't know. But what we do know, and what's really fascinating, Sean, is that the judge mandated this order after Flynn pled guilty, which is highly unusual, right? This is very unusual. So he did it after the guilty plea. That means that this order supersedes the plea agreement that Flynn had with Mueller. And what they asked for was all evidence, all information, even that which would be favorable to Flynn. They also said, and the judge stipulated this, that even if you believe the evidence that you've obtained has nothing to do with this case, you still have to turn it over to me, and then I will make the decision whether or not to turn that information over to Flynn's attorneys, Robert Kellner. So the judge is taking this very seriously. They want all of this, they wanted him to turn over all of this information. He has complied, according to the sources that I've spoken with. And as you've said, special counsel has not commented on this. Neither has Robert Kellner, so I don't know where he's going to go forward. We know that in May, they're going to go before the judge again, and then they're going to arrange what we believe to be was a sentencing hearing. But right now, it looks like anything can happen, and maybe Flynn can even withdraw that plea. At least that's what I'm hearing from a lot of people, a lot of hopes.
Even Strzok and Comey didn't think that Flynn lied. So either this was, oh, we'll go after your son, or you agree to this, or they just made it up.
Well, well, no, there was a lot of pressure. They put a lot of pressure on him, and they probably twisted his arm. I mean, this is what they do. We've been talking about these cases, you know, for the past few weeks with Weissman and Mueller. So right now, I mean, we know for a fact that Peter Strzok, based on former FBI Director James Comey's own testimony before the House Intelligence Committee, that they believed Flynn. So why did he plead guilty?
The two agents who interviewed Michael Flynn are percipient witnesses, so they're very important in any case against Flynn. If they walked out of that interview, as we now know, and told the Attorney General Yates and James Comey, there's no crime here by Flynn, he's telling the truth, his recollection may be slightly different than we interpreted the transcript of his conversation with the Russian ambassador, but that's not a crime. Mueller thought he knew better. He wasn't in on that interview. And if Flynn's lawyers didn't know of this exculpatory evidence.
The judge's language was so firm because he's like, I'll decide what's exculpatory. What do you make of these new texts? And by the way, we were going to have breaking news tomorrow. I only got a preview tonight. It's going to be pretty damning as it relates to the lovebirds. But what we do know, that Mark Meadows' office pulled out, what is this again? You're going to have to get involved again in the 2016.
Because they knew that James Comey had, for political reasons, at their behest, by the way, had thrown the Hillary Clinton case, clearing her. And then Peter Strzok is the guy who signs the papers opening the fraudulent investigation of Trump-Russian collusion without collusion even being a crime. So they knew it was all politically driven.
You're the only one that's pointed out collusion's not a crime, which is fascinating.
And every time I do, you know, I get a lot of heat. And these fact-check organizations go to these obscure professors from universities you've never heard of, and they sort of grudgingly say, well, that is true, but there might be 3 or 4 other crimes.
Are they CNN contributors?
And they cite those crimes.
I can't help myself.
And I look up those crimes, and they have no application or relevance to collusion in a political campaign or any of the facts relating to this.
Yeah, Sarah, I hear there's a lot more coming, and this is only 3,000 pages that they keep going back to and finding little nuggets. How many more pages are going to be available?
Imagine that, out of 1.2 million or more documents, pages, that the Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, has collected and has used for his investigation. So this is just the tip of the iceberg, Sean. And, you know, as far as, like, going back to Flynn, remember, McCabe was the one that ordered, you know, them to go interview Flynn. And so this is going to be very interesting to see what they get.
All right, thank you both. We have a jam-packed lineup tonight. When my opening monologue, NRA TV contributor and former Secret Service agent Dan Bongino, also with us. All right, this book is amazing, and Geraldo has lived 1,000 lives in one. Your stuff about war and your background, nearly 50 years in media, and it's just incredible. And there's so many memories I have in this book, and I congratulate you.
Thank you, brother.
It's just out in bookstores everywhere, on my website, Hannity.com. and Amazon.com. All right. Okay, so the president Is it not a national security issue?
Now we'll fight.
Probably.
I love him like a brother. We
Is it
disagree.
not national security to stop drugs, gangs, and potential terrorists from entering our country?
Yes.
So the president, as commander-in-chief, should have the authority to fund the wall with national defense money.
Well, the problem is when you are now messing with the allocation for the Department of Defense, this is not specifically their bailiwick. It would require, not a bad idea, and not a bad justification.
But he's the commander-in-chief, right?
But you really need a congressional law apportioning where the money goes. If you had a specific law,
the national defense.
If he could get Congress to agree to pass a law, then I would agree. But not by executive fiat. I don't think he could.
But the problem is, Dan Bongino, he's the commander-in-chief, not Paul Ryan or Chuck Schumer or anybody in Congress. He's the commander-in-chief, and he deems this is a national security issue, which it is. He would be able to appropriate those funds, and I think he's going to do it.
Sean, any rational person would conclude that this is a national security decision. It is not a secret to anyone other than blind liberals that narco traffickers and international terrorists have long been taking advantage of our poorest, nearly non-existent in some cases, southern border. This is a ground ball bunt decision. I applaud him if he decides to go forward with it. It's the right decision.
Yeah. I just have one thing to say about the wall. I was at a Cleveland Cavaliers game, Go Cavs, and they had a T-shirt gun that they shot up into the upper deck.
I love
so you're going to build this $25 billion wall, and some drug dealer with one of those T-shirt guns is going to shoot the piles of fentanyl over the wall. I think the wall won't stop the drugs. It won't stop the pros. It will stop Juan and Maria, the apricot pickers. But still, if you want to...
I think that's nonsense, Geraldo. That argument's not used for anything else. We don't say that about homicide laws. We don't say, well, homicide law is going to cause a slight obstruction because if you kill someone, they may have to spend some time in prison too. You don't enact a law for the purpose of absolutely black and white stopping inactivity. You make it more difficult. So that argument that, oh, well, they're just going to build a ladder. Okay, build a ladder. Then we'll build a higher wall, and then you go build a higher ladder. That's how this works. It's not a black or white issue.
I said to the President of the United States himself, I said, you can make a deal. You want the wall, and a majority of the voters in the states that mattered said they want the wall. You want the wall? Good. Get the $25 billion to build the wall, and give me 1.6 million dreamers a path to citizenship.
He already offered that.
That was a deal. That was a deal that can be made today. But everyone started adding stuff, chain migration and cutting down on legal immigration, and they larded it up. You could make a deal today. I think they should make a deal today. A lot of people want the wall. Let them build the wall. If you want to spend the $25 billion instead of on schools and highways and so forth, listen, I'm okay with it as long as you give these kids some security.
Trump didn't run on DACA. Trump ran on building the wall. This is no mystery. You know it. I know it.
But
You're
the
a smart
Democrats
guy.
were offered
it was
that.
in
They were
almost
offered
every
DACA.
speech.
And by the way, the one thing about fentanyl being shot over with the Cleveland Cavaliers T-shirt, it's funny. But here's the thing. The wall, according to agents, and the president's looking at prototypes, they're going to be able to see through. And they'll be able to know if they're on the other side. And if they're on the other side, our agents will be all over them.
But don't you agree? Why not make a simple deal? A simple deal. You got the dreamers, which are going to be a sore on the president's side.
The Democrats don't want it. The Democrats do not want a deal. They want to run on it in 2018.
Because the Republicans have offered them a 3-year amnesty for the dreamers, not a path to citizenship.
The president offered DACA in exchange for 3 things: chain migration and the visa lottery, which we know there are flaws in it because of recent attacks. And he said he wants the wall.
Can I hate to. Can I just change this? Wait, Dan, hold on a second. Okay. I want to say something that we all agree on now. I think that I've caught the New York Times in one of the most egregious acts of partisanship you will ever hear about, and I think that too many people let this go unnoted. The headline in yesterday's New York Times about Stormy Daniels reads, "Adult film star feared for safety of daughter after Trump threat." After Trump threat. Headline, front page, New York Times, not after alleged Trump threat, not after purported Trump threat, not after supposed Trump threat. It said after Trump threat. The New York Times has abandoned all pretense of objectivity toward the 45th president of the United States. You can disagree about walls and so forth, but this is absolutely scurrilous.
Last word, Dan.
Yeah, well, Geraldo, I just on the path to citizenship part, I don't know why you assume that that should be part of anything. You entered the country illegally, and I always ask this question. I'll ask it of you. Think about this when you're sleeping tonight, Geraldo. What do you tell people like my wife who came to the country legally, busted their butts,
How many years did it take her?
spent thousands of dollars on lawyers? It took her a long time, and it was an awful process. What do you say to those people if they could have come here illegally and gotten the exact same thing?
Okay, quick.
Kid comes 6 months old in his mother's arms, has nothing to say about it, grows up,
We're not talking about
the whole
kids.
life in America.
Right.
What, are you going to throw this kid out to a country the kid never knew? I think it's...
Geraldo's book,
Parents shouldn't have brought him here.
An Amazing
Shame on
Life
the New York
Lived.
Times. Thank you.
All right, appreciate it.
Thank you, brother.
For being
Thank
with us.
you.
And thank you, Dan. All right, as we've been explaining, the media has proven they will stoop to new lows, as Geraldo was just describing, to destroy and, of course, delegitimize Donald Trump's presidency. And the Stormy Daniels hysteria is the latest example. Here to weigh in on all of this, he is the host of CRTV's Levin TV, the host of Life, Liberty, Levin, the great one, I call him, right here on the Fox News channel, Sunday nights, 10 p.m., the #1 show in his time slot. Thank me. Look, this is too serious. I'm watching Anderson Cooper. We did a side-by-side. Yeah. Jerry Springer Cooper. Because he asked the same questions that Jerry Springer asked. And they've done this 24/7 for weeks. The same network that never interviewed Juanita Broaddrick till October of 2016, Mark. This is not tabloid. This is agenda-driven, Zucker-driven drivel because he has an agenda against Donald Trump.
Well, and they're getting ratings. You see what 60 Minutes did. They got the greatest ratings they've had
CNN
since,
doesn't have those.
Yeah, exactly. But the truth is, if Donald Trump's last name was Kennedy, we'd not be seeing a thing of this. They'd be covering it up. And here's the difference. Number one, why is it assumed that the porno actress and the ex-Playboy bunny are telling the truth? And why are the media focused on this? Let's take a look at Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was accused of sexual assault in the Oval Office. Bill Clinton was accused of having sex with an intern in the Oval Office. Bill Clinton was accused as Attorney General in an official position of raping Juanita Broaddrick. Bill Clinton was governor of Arkansas, accused of using his position to try and get sex and exposing himself to an employee, Paula Jones. Donald Trump isn't even close, even if you believe all this, which I know, he's not even close to this stuff. John Kennedy had an affair with a mob boss's girlfriend. John Kennedy had a relationship with an East German spy. John Kennedy had sex with an intern in the White House pool. John Kennedy, I mean, so many examples. LBJ was said to be worse than John Kennedy. I can go on and on and on. Now, the media will say, well, that's a diversion. No, I'll tell you what's a diversion. The media have ignored the rogue activity of the highest levels of the FBI. The media have ignored Russia's influence in our election. We now know that the Obama administration knew about it, that Susan Rice knew about it, told the people to stand down. We got these lectures from Mark Warner and Adam Schiff. Unbelievable, they said, the Russians would get involved in our election. They're right. Now that we know that the Obama administration knew about it, vertically, horizontally, departments and agencies, and did nothing about it. Moreover, we know that lies were told to federal judges at the FISA court to get a warrant to spy on an American citizen. And then for a year, they got 3 extensions. The media do not care about that. So what do the media care about? The pornification of the media. Last week, it was Donald Trump was mentally ill, so they dragged this professor out from Yale and pranced her from one station to another. Before that, it was this kook with his book, Michael Wolff. Everybody didn't trust him, but anyway, he was good for a week, and then we get to hear from this idiot for a week. And it goes on and on and on. The media obviously hate Trump. Here's what they're trying to do. They know that Trump supporters aren't going to be persuaded by any of this. But what they're trying to do is get the people out there who don't really pay a lot of attention, who may not be Trump supporters, and they keep driving the stake in, grabbing anything they can, including a porno star who I'd never heard of. I never heard of any of these people before. And all of a sudden, they're presented to the American people as if they're truth tellers. This Anderson Cooper, you know, I didn't watch this. You showed this on your show earlier. the questions he was asking? Has he no shame? Is he not embarrassed? The children of this country to listen to a reporter go on and on about the kind of sex, what kind of sex, when you had sex?
It's creepy.
What is it? It's sick.
It's sick.
It's sick.
It really
and I'm
is
starting
creepy.
to think some of these reporters are enjoying sitting at their computers doing research on Daniels or whatever her name is, Smokey Daniels, whatever her name is. Stormy Daniels, and so forth and so on.
Smoky, Stormy, you don't know the difference.
I don't know. They're starting to get a kick out of it. Anyway, it's really pathetic.
I can't. I'm actually crying. You know, Jerry Springer, we did last night side by side. I think we have it inside our control room. Let me play this for you. This is just a gift for the great one, Mark Levin, because I know you were busy last night. Watch this.
You told Donald Trump to turn around and take off his pants.
Yes.
And did he?
Yes.
You're young, you like to have fun, you're party girl, etc. So what's the story here?
Oh, Lord.
And you had sex with him?
Yes.
Do you want to be with her boyfriend?
No, it's just a one-time thing.
Did you want to have sex with him?
No. But I didn't say no.
You're not interested in being with him. He's just a customer, right? Or are you interested in being with him?
He ended up taking me home.
You work in an industry where condom use is an issue. Did he use a condom?
No.
Did you ask him to?
No.
So you had sex with him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say. That wasn't hard to do. And by the way, if they want to fight, I'm just starting. I think this will be more fun than I've ever had on TV or radio in 30 years.
You know, Sean, on a serious note, the media in this country is really as low as I've ever seen it before. It's not really the media. You've got a lot of people who've poured into these stations and poured into these newspapers that had minimal experience, very thin backgrounds, or ideological agendas. We have North Korea that's threatening us with nuclear missiles. We have Iran that's trying to get nuclear missiles. We have Russia that's not only interfering with our elections, but threatening us. We have China that's threatening us, stealing our technology.
It's all true.
We have rogue top officials at the FBI. We had rogue officials at the DOJ. We've got this special counsel running around, Mr. Clouseau, who can't really find the actual Russian interference, and the Obama administration standing down when all that took place. America's in a tough place right now. We're in a tough place right now because the job of the media is to protect the people from the government. What the media are doing, what I call the Praetorian Guard media, they're the mouthpieces and scribes for the ideological left, for the Democrat Party. They are embarrassing themselves. Anderson Cooper will never live down that interview. CNN will never live down that interview. And the more they chase these sort of things, and they're not serious, it's one thing to have differences of opinion on substance, and the more they bring out her slip and fall lawyer to go out there and make the arguments he makes, the more they degrade themselves.
Well said, the great one, Mark Levin. Sunday nights, 10 Eastern, Life, Liberty, and Levin. That's why we call him the great one. Thank me. God bless us. When we come back, an exclusive interview. The undersheriff, Orange County, California. He is defying California's lawless sanction enforced federal law. We sent our own Tommy Lahren to Orange County to ask residents what they think of the undersheriff and this move. Take a look.
So I can tell by your shirt that you're probably pretty excited about the Orange County Sheriff who's making the list of inmates, criminal inmates, available upon their release, making it easier for ICE to do their job.
I support the enforcement of law, and I want to see that happen. That's an important thing to our community.
We should do as much as we can to find out, certain kind of criminals that are here illegally, that they should follow law.
It's a bad idea. I think being a sanctuary city, we're supposed to protect, each other, and we're supposed to build bridges. I believe in building bridges and not walls,
I think we should be paying our immigration officers to do probably more to go ahead and do their job a bit better.
Well, then what about making it easier for them to find criminal illegal aliens that are coming out of prison?
Yeah, it should be extremely easy to do that, yeah.
I guess if they're violent, sure, but what if, you got a ticket crossing the street, like jaywalking or something, and
they're coming out of jail, though? I mean, that's not really a jail issue.
You can go to jail for all kinds of things here, right? If you have unpaid traffic violations, you're gonna land in jail, right?
If those people have that many unpaid traffic violations, is that the kind of people you want living in your country that have no legal right to be here in the first place?
Most Californians do not want California to be a lawless sanctuary state. They want to be protected. They want the laws enforced.
Joining us live from Orange County, California, Fox News contributor Tommy Lahren. Orange County is not California. Orange County is a little bit of a more conservative area. But if they go after this sheriff, this is where it gets serious. And you heard the Attorney General today. I wonder, does that then mean that the Oakland mayor that was aiding and abetting criminal illegal immigrants by telling them that they were going to be arrested and giving them an opportunity to get away, is now they're going to be reciprocity? This could be an all-out battle.
I think if the citizens of California, wherever they are honest with themselves, they want to be safe and secure in the state of California. And again, talking to people on the streets today, that's what you heard. This community, although it is somewhat conservative in Orange County, where we are in Santa Ana, this is an immigrant community as well. There are a lot of immigrants here, some of them illegal, some of them legal. And the legal immigrants that I spoke to, although they want what's best for their fellow immigrants, they believe in the rule of law. They want to be safe in their community because they feel that they are Americans. That's what I heard today.
And remember, the president said, I want to build a big wall on the southern border with a big door, but just asking people to do it legally.
Well, I think that that's what I've been asking people for weeks now in California, and they agree. I think that the left has just dominated this conversation about the wall, and it's become just a talking point at this point. But if you really break it down, people want security, they want safety, they want the immigration process to be reformed. They want common sense, and the wall is common sense. It's just the left has dominated this conversation, and they've made the wall some kind of a demon object, and it's not. It's for the safety of Americans.
All right, Tommy, thanks so much for doing that. Great job tonight. Joining us now with more on this decision is the Orange County, California Undersheriff Don Barnes is with us. Sir, first I want to applaud you. Yeah. Secondly, I kind of took what your Attorney General out in California said as a threat. In other words, he wouldn't, almost insinuating he might try to arrest you for just putting out who's in jail and when they're getting released. Isn't that legal?
Well, it is completely legal. It's under the law that was passed under Senate Bill 54. There is a provision that says what we clearly cannot do, which is we cannot communicate with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, but it says we can make this information available if we make it available to the public, which is exactly what we've done yesterday. Yeah. So we are following the law, and we have an obligation to follow the law.
Doesn't the state of California, when you have an Oakland mayor, again, the ICE was trying to enforce laws against criminal illegal immigrants, those that committed other crimes beyond that which was not respecting our laws and sovereignty. If I were to give people a warning that you were about to go in and hold them accountable for crimes, would I be aiding and abetting and obstructing justice?
Well, potentially, but that I think that would be a little bit of a stretch. This is what we are very clearly doing. We're going after very serious offenders who are in custody of our jail and are being convicted of some very serious crimes. SB 54 allows us to notify ICE on those that were under the Trust Act, which was passed in 2014, a previously passed legislation. And that's what we're doing. We're still notifying ICE. The sheriff has that discretion. Last year, we turned over 580. We had 57,000 bookings, so that's a small percentage, or actually just 58,000. This year, we've already turned over 181. But 244 individuals were not turned over to ICE, and that's what we're concerned about. So they're very serious crimes, and they're being returned back into the community, and quite honestly, back to the communities in which they preyed upon and committed their crimes to begin with. So we're trying to help the community be safer by turning these individuals over to ICE and not letting them return to the communities and commit more crime.
Do you have a response to the Attorney General and the comments that he made tonight? Because I took them as a little threatening towards you.
Well, they were threatening, but I would say my hope would be that he would read the language of the law that was passed. It very clearly says in there what we can and cannot do. We cannot communicate with ICE, which is in and of itself a challenge. It's returning us back to a pre-9/11 condition legislatively where we can't talk with other federal law enforcement agencies, and that's problematic on its face. But it also has a provision where we can make this information available publicly. It's information made available publicly on every inmate within our custody of the jail who has a sentence expiration date, not those who are here illegally. Every inmate in our care has that information posted online. So we're not designating anybody. Anybody can go sift through that information, find out who's here.
Sheriff, if he does do anything, I promise you I will do everything in my power to help mobilize people to assist and help you in any way we can. Thank you for standing up for the rule of law.
You're welcome, Sean. Thanks for having me.
When we come back, an incredible emotional display of camaraderie. It will break your heart. That's next. From all around the country, they line the streets of New York City today to pay tribute to one of their own who died while battling a 5-alarm fire last week. 37-year-old Michael Davidson, 15-year veteran firefighter, suffered critical injuries fighting a basement fire on a movie set in Harlem in New York on Thursday night. And according to the New York Post, Davidson got separated from the rest of his unit after they were forced to retreat due to the severity of the flames. Now, Davidson ultimately ran out of compressed air, and he collapsed while trying to escape. During his funeral service, which was held at beautiful St. Patrick's Cathedral, Davidson was remembered as, quote, a hero of the highest order. He sadly leaves behind a wife and 4 children. He is an American hero. And our thoughts and prayers are with him and his family tonight. And if there is a GoFundMe page we find out about, we will let you know about that, or a scholarship, and I'd be glad to donate myself. God bless that family. Very hard. Before we go, if you have anything to say, 877-225-8587. We'll see you back here tomorrow night. Let not your heart be troubled.